You ready to get a little rowdy? Because I am. I just watched a video that someone sent to me of the Bible thumping wingnut guy. I don't remember his name. Sorry. I'm just going to call him Mr. Wingnut, and I don't mean to be offensive. That's the name of his channel. Someone sent me a message saying that this guy made a video of me the other day, or me on the thumbnail at least. And this is, at least to my knowledge, the second time that he's done it. So I decided I'm going to give a little bit of a response. And I'm assuming, because he's left comments and tried to hop in the chat and, um, all of that, that I'm just assuming he's one of those guys that watches people that he disagrees with. Um, and so I'm assuming that he probably is watching this even without it being sent to him, but maybe someone will send it to him. So, Mr. Wingnut, I'm going to be responding to a few things that you said about me and, more importantly, some of my friends. Now, this picture over here has a bunch of different avatars of people on Twitter, people that I like, a lot of them, people that I've built a relationship with online over years, and people that I respect, and maybe not people that I agree with on everything, but people that I think love Jesus and are unhappy with John MacArthur. And so this guy, Mr. Wingnut, he decided to make a video lumping us all together as if we all belong in the same categories on all these different things, and saying that we're just like the John MacArthur hater mob. I think that's the word. Twitter mob. And so he says a few things. There are 10 things that he wants to point out, things that he's learned. And I get that that's a personal thing. Like, that's just your personal opinion about, what you see online. That being said, I'm going to respond to a few of them because I don't think it's fair. A lot of times when people talk about me, some people have made videos about me. I don't know why. Like, again, this guy has 100,000 subscribers and I have 3. Okay. So, but I get it. I'm a public figure. I talk about, public people online. And so some people take umbrage with that, whatever. Most of the time, I don't really care. I think it's fair game. And to have my face on the cover here, I don't really mind that too much. It's just mostly all the other people who might not have platforms, who just have, a couple hundred followers on Twitter. Some of them have thousands, but the vast majority of them are just tweeting out their thoughts. And he decided to lump everyone together and say, this is the Twitter mob and this is what they're about. And it's inaccurate and it's not fair. One, he talks about how there's a connection. I thought about going through and showing everything, but there's just a few things that he basically brings up. One is that he's very concerned that a lot of us have differences of opinions. And, there are atheists who don't like John MacArthur, and there are Calvinist haters, which I watched a video that he made about, partially about me, I think. And he lumped me into the Calvinist hater group, which I'm not. Like, I am a Calvinist. So that was kind of funny to me. But he's probably learned by now, because I think he's probably watched quite a few of my videos. But he's just saying, like, all these people, they disagree about all these things. And here's the one thing that brings them all together. It's John MacArthur. As if that's a bad thing. Like, as if that means that this group, these people online, it's not like a union. We don't meet on Thursdays for tacos and talking smack about John MacArthur. Like, that's not a thing. But it's just individuals who have similar ideas about John MacArthur. And he's basically saying, because you come from all these different perspectives, that must mean that you guys are all wrong on John MacArthur. Or like that this should be looked at as a bad thing because you're like, this is the one thing that you guys all agree on. What's wrong with that? what's wrong with having differences of opinions on many things, but having something in common with someone and saying, I agree with that thing that you're saying? There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't disprove anything that these people have said. It doesn't, negate anything that they've tweeted by saying, oh, well, you're friends with, an atheist, or this tweet that you retweeted came from an atheist. You know who do that? Like who does that kind of stuff? Fundies. Fundies do that kind of stuff where it's just, oh, you're friends with this person. And so that makes it that everything you've ever said is wrong. Not true. Not true. Some of the other things that he brought up, he wanted to talk a lot about how these people get so mad. One of the things he said was that being nice is more important than being right to these people, including me. And that's just wrong. And no one I know thinks like that. Usually that's an accusation from someone who is tone deaf. Like they're just not understanding how they're coming off. Maybe they think that everyone thinks like them. And so like they can just say whatever they want, and how people react is like they're reacting wrong because they just didn't take this time to understand you, not because you didn't communicate your opinion very well in a way that other people would understand. But they're the ones who are wrong for mishearing you. Being nice matters. It matters in real life. Jesus told us that, treat people the way that you would like to be treated. But these people like the Mr. Wingnut guy, and like people like Right Response Ministries, or like people on Twitter like Owen Strand used to do this quite a bit, Josh Bice, who's another, Dale Partridge, these guys who just kind of say like the bluntest thing possible online and then expect people to not be, taken back by that, or like maybe they do want it. Maybe they like to instigate stuff. Like I'm not going to ascribe motive to people, but a lot of times people do like doing that. But a lot of these times these guys just say, this is truth. And it's like, okay, well, even if that's correct, even if it is correct, you do understand that you're talking to people. You would never do that in real life, or at least most of the time. Like these people would not do that in real life, where like, let's say that someone's at a gas station, they're pumping gas and they're wearing a shirt that has a message on it, and you disagree with that message. Would you just walk up to them and say, these are all the reasons why I disagree with you? Would you do that? Like if you would, like that probably speaks more about you as a person and that you're just an abrasive person. But most people would be like, hey, can I have a conversation with you? What's your name? Get to know them a little bit. If you really feel the need to say these are the reasons why I disagree with the message on your shirt, you wouldn't just come over and yell in their face about all the things that they're wrong about. You would try to get to know them and have a relationship with them. And the online world is just like that. It's the same thing. It's not like people are any different online than they are in real life. Like that's a common thing that people are just like, online people change. No, they don't. They're still people. And if you come at them, yelling at them and saying you're wrong about all these things, you really think you're going to get listened to? Some of these guys think, yeah, because I'm speaking truth. Now, maybe it's the truth, maybe it's not. But the way that they're presenting themselves, they're coming off as a jerk. A lot of times people, I'm not saying Mr. Wingnut guy, I don't really know him. All right. I've blocked him on YouTube and on Twitter. Sorry, Mr. Wingnut, but you came off as one of those kind of guys. So I don't know this person. But a lot of people like this individual. They act like that. They come off really aggressive, and people are going to react to that aggressive tone. And even if they're right, they're not going to be listened to because of the way that they come off. And that's just, about wisdom, like of dealing with people and interacting with people. That doesn't mean like people are saying, well, it's better to be nice. No, but if you have truth, you better be nice and say that truth in a nice way so that people can understand you. The Bible talks all about that. Proverbs is filled with all kinds of verses that talk about the sweetness of speech being persuasive, and the king will listen to you with sweetness of speech. Like that's what the Bible says. Like that, and it's also just common sense. If you talk to someone in an abrasive manner or come at them on Twitter with all the reasons why you disagree, most likely you're not going to be listened to. And sometimes, I'm not saying it's right, but you're going to get that same tone in response. So I don't think that Mr. Wingnut really understands that. And then probably the biggest thing, the main thing that's wrong with what he says about me and people like me on Twitter, and I'm assuming probably on YouTube as well, is really discrediting everything Julie Royce has written, or Kate Shellnut, or the government of California, for that matter. and just saying like all none of that really matters. He talks a lot about accusations. And, the reason why John MacArthur is under so much heat over the last couple years is not just because of his tone. Now, maybe that doesn't help, but it's because of the things that he's done and the things that he's neglected and the proof that is out there. The court documents the fact that he supported a guy who went to prison for abusing his wife and children and still supported him as a missionary in prison. Or the letter that he wrote a little girl telling her just to forgive her daddy because it's really that simple. There's stuff. It's not just accusations. And there are people who are wanting John MacArthur to be held responsible for that. Or, and I think in a good way, to have his platform diminished. The influence of someone who believes these kinds of things, and it's not just 2 stories, there are more and more stories that keep on coming out. There is a track record with John MacArthur on this issue of abuse, domestic abuse, other forms of abuse that I'm being careful about describing because of YouTube. But he has a track record and he has a lot of influence. And through Masters, through ACBC and John Street being on the board there and their influence, that is being taught to more and more people. And so, yes, there are people online who are trying to say, hey, here's where this guy is wrong. And you know what? Some people are starting to listen, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the work of Julie Royce, for Kate Shellnut, for the government of California, for showing off these errors. And does that make John MacArthur wrong on everything? Nope. It doesn't. John MacArthur gets the gospel right. He does. He believes the gospel. But just because he believes the gospel means that we shouldn't point out these flaws, these major flaws that are having an impact. And he kept on giving examples of what abuse is and belittling. Like he said something to the effect of, the abuse is what I say it is. This is what he's accusing people online of saying. Abuse is what I say it is, and basically changing the definition of abuse. The problem with that, by the way, is if you're saying like they're saying abuse is what I say it is, you're also saying that yourself, because you're saying you're wrong on abuse. Abuse is what I say it is. Bible Thumping Wingnut says it is. So that's a two-way street. But he gave an example that I thought was actually pretty telling. And I don't know if it's a real life example of someone he knows or whatever. I'm not going to read too much into it. I come up with illustrations sometimes off the top of my head, and it has no connection to real life. So I get that. But it is concerning because he's talking about how people online think anything is abuse. And he gave an example of a husband who loses his temper once a week and for 30 seconds yells at his wife. And then he just does that every week. And that's not abuse. Yeah, it is. That's verbal abuse. Like, where do you see that in scripture of a loving husband yelling at his wife every week? yelling at his wife, like that is not a biblical loving husband. That is not Christ loving his church. That's not the picture that we see in Scripture. And if there is that, I'm very curious on what else is happening. So like, it's things like that these guys go like, oh, you're jumping to conclusions. Well, maybe there's more going on. Like maybe it's not just yelling for 30 seconds once a week. What else is happening? And he gave illustrations of, oh, like this guy doesn't help around the house. Okay. Well, being a lazy husband is a pretty bad thing and can be another sign of more stuff that's going on. Or he gave another example of going bowling on Thursday nights, even though the wife doesn't want him to. Well, all these things are adding up to where you're saying like, oh, does this wife really have any freedom to do anything other than being expected to take care of the home? And that's it. Other than bending over backwards to try to please this husband and get screamed at every week. like all of these things come together. And like a lot of these guys, they just don't understand what abuse is. They think it's always, well, he didn't punch her. There are different forms of abuse, and it's not just physical abuse. And the Bible makes it clear that it isn't just physical abuse. It's abandonment. When you abandon your spouse, if you are constantly yelling at your wife, if you are constantly leaving her at home, telling her she has to do all these things and you're not going to help any at all because you work, his example was 60 hours a week, which most people don't work 60 hours a week. Everyone says they work 60 hours a week, but most people don't work 60 hours a week. But also, I learned how to be a husband from my father-in-law, not from my dad. My father-in-law literally worked 60 hours a week. And yet every time I saw him at his house, he's doing the laundry. He's doing the dishes. He's making supper. Like he's always doing something around the house, doing a project. And I learned how to be a loving husband from watching him. And I think that's a good example, like that you serve. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. The husband should serve his wife. And that's okay. And that's good. And it's holy. And it's a loving, healthy relationship. Now, when you start getting into like, I don't have to do squat for you. I didn't punch you, so you can't leave me. Like, maybe there's more going on there, and a pastor should get involved and have some of those hard conversations and figure out, is there abuse going on? Now, I'm not saying that there is, but these examples that he gave, I think, were actually kind of telling. And I understand if someone's going to think that way about the husband and wife dynamic of why he would have zero concerns for John MacArthur, especially when right off the bat he said the false accusations of Julie Royce. Well, the government had something to say, and there's a guy in prison over the things that Julie Royce wrote about, so maybe there's something more to that. And yes, this track record does have people on edge for what John MacArthur says and does, and it might lead them to have a certain bias against him. And I understand that. I have that bias. I will firmly say that I do. But just because someone has a bias doesn't mean that they're wrong. And maybe the reason why they have that bias should be investigated. If someone has a track record, maybe you should understand why they have that track record. And when something new comes out, maybe they're not going to be believed right off the bat. Just some thoughts. Well, tell MacArthur I'm busy. I got other stuff going on. Oh, hey, you made it through the whole video. That's awesome. If you really liked it, like you probably did because you watched the whole thing, why don't you hit the like button before you click on another video? I've got one just sitting right here. It was predestined. I'm a Calvinist, so it was predestined just for you.